Is this the worst story in the entire collection of 10th of December? I think maybe so. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another short story discussion, which will appear in 3 different playlists here on the channel. Number 1 being the short story discussion playlist, number 2 being the George Saunders playlist, and number 3 being the short story by short story read along of 10th of December by George Saunders. The short story in question today, My Chivalric Fiasco. This video will have 3 separate parts: a So What Happened recap of the story, a literary criticism section, and a writer's corner, which involves just one talking point for this video. So, what happened? Ted is a janitor, but not for long. While working the torchlight night, he accidentally walks in on his boss, Don, forcing himself on Martha. The next day, he's called into the office, and Martha has $1,000 and a promotion. And Ted has a promotion, which is good because he's the only person in his family who has a job. Later, Ted happens upon Martha and her man, Nate. The idea is brought up by Nate, that Martha has been sort of moody lately, and Ted says, well, promotions can be hard. Martha is grateful that Ted keeps their secret. The next day at work, Ted's new position comes with drugs. Hooray! Drugs to help him improv. So he takes the pill to help with improv, and he gets to work, and the pill also starts working. And he finds himself around both Dawn and Martha, and the drugs give him diarrhea of the mouth. He starts spouting off the situation that he caught, and everything blows up. Dawn calls security. They beat up Ted, and they kick him out, and he is fired. The rest of the story is him walking around reflecting on how terrible everything is going to be now that he is unemployed. So, there's not really a whole lot here to talk about, I think, that doesn't happen on the surface level of the short story. So, pardon me for going maybe a little bit extracurricular. There seems to be in society today the great attack on the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, the type of thing that it seems happens between Dawn and Martha in this short story. So what is an NDA? Someone does something bad, and in order to make up for it, they give the afflicted individual stuff. They will give you things so you don't complain. You take the stuff and don't complain, or you complain and don't get the stuff. But you don't get both. We seem to be finding people that want to sign the NDA, get the money, get the stuff, and then a little bit later complain. It just seems to be something, maybe it's always been this way, I don't know. But it seems to be that is a thing that is happening with NDAs these days, because I think there is a great villainization of the NDA. But the NDA is something that helps the afflicted party. It's sort of like settling out of court so if you have a lawsuit, say you work at the corner 5 and dime and something happens to you, and you settle out of court instead of going through with the suit, saving yourself time and money, but you settle for a little bit less than maybe you would get through the court. That's basically kind of like an NDA. The weird thing about, I think it's a zeitgeist thing, the villainization of the NDA, is that really what it does is it takes the power away from the afflicted. Right? It takes the oomph away from, hey, give me whatever you can give me and I'll shut up and go away, right? Because there's no guarantee of that. You remove the penalty from the individual who is breaking the NDA. The person who is enforcing the NDA has no reason to believe that they will be protected. It's just an interesting thing that I brought up because it's kind of what happens in this short story. Now we'll get away from that and to a little bit of reader's response criticism. I think that this is the worst story in the collection. I think that this is, and so there's a real big point with this short story that I think is an interesting talking point, but it's going to be the next one we get to. I want to get these two out of the way first. I think that this is the worst short story in the collection. It is, I believe, the shortest. It's only 12 pages, right? There's no one that's really likable. No characters are really likable, and at the same time, the most dislikable character, Dawn, seems to be trying to make things right after colossally screwing up, but we don't even get that struggle. So we have no real stakes in the short story. It feels like this feels almost like an episode of a sitcom, which at his worst, that's what George Saunders feels like. Not even a sitcom, probably a sitcom cartoon, right? One of these, is it more? I almost said Mork and Mindy. That is not the cartoon that people like. Mort and something, I think. Anyway, the scenes that I have seen from that short story, it is especially silly, kind of like a George Saunders short story. So, it just seems to me that this is what you can expect from George Saunders at his worst. Sitcom type humor, sitcom type situations. You feel the machinations of the short story, which I'll get to in the writer's corner portion of this, but I'm not sure that there's a whole lot here worth really diving too deep into, except for this. This is number 3 here, reliability of narration. This is interesting to me. We have, deep in the short story, we have a reaction from Martha. This is as Ted is going on his diatribe because he has become chivalric all of a sudden. Turning to Martha, I requested, by inflection of my head, her assent in these statements and confirmation of the truth of that which I had declared. But alas, the wench did not affirm me, only dropped her eyes as if in shame, and fled that place. That passage made me think a little bit about this. We already know that someone in this short story is lying. We are presented with the opportunity, the responsibility of assuming that the liar here is Don. Don has committed this violent act and is attempting to lie to the public by glossing that over with 2 promotions and $1,000. That's what it seems like, right? And okay, maybe you accept the short story at that level. That reaction, however, that I just read, doesn't really seem authentic to me. Someone who has been, maybe I'm wrong, but someone who's been taken advantage of, dropping her eyes in shame when the truth about this situation comes out, and leaving. And then you start to think, well, someone who's in that situation also continuing to work in said establishment, probably unlikely. Possible, but unlikely. So, here's my question. The individual who is going to stick around in that situation, the individual who is going to act the way that Martha acted once the truth has roiled to the surface, is that more realistic to say, yeah, that's how that person would act? Or is it more realistic when I read this scene? Don Murray flew past me looking frazzled. Then I heard a sob. On her back near the armor pile I found Martha from scullery, peasant skirt up around her waist. Martha, that guy is my boss. Oh my God. Oh my God. I knew Don Murray was her boss because Don Murray was also my boss. All of a sudden she recognized me. Ted. Don't tell Ted, she said. Please, it's no big deal. Nate can't know. It would kill him. Is it possible that that scene is not a scene of Martha being taken advantage of, but a scene of Martha and Don having an affair? And then they just whip up this entire facade of, oh, it was a mistake. And maybe mistake gets misinterpreted as taken advantage of. Because we don't really, we have the payoff scene, right? But if the situation were that Don was trying to pay off Martha, give Martha a promotion to shut her up, hush money, and shut up Ted, would that scene look very similar to, hey, I've got us all here. Everybody needs to shut the F up. Martha, because we were having the affair, you get the $1,000 as well. But Ted, I'm taking care of you, man. I'm taking care of you. And wouldn't that make a little bit more sense with the way that Martha treats this situation as it relates to Nate, her boyfriend, fiance, husband? I can't remember exactly. So, I don't know. I had to have something to talk about. I thought that was an interesting talking point, that this may be an affair being misconstrued as abuse. So, the last thing that I want to talk about here is the writer's corner portion of this. This short story is rough because you can see the wheels cranking. Oftentimes, George Saunders is bad at getting motivating factors worked into the story, and so eventually you just have a character tell you why they are acting the way they do, as is the case here. You have Ted tell you, oh, I was the only one in my family with a job. You have Martha tell you Nate would die. You have all of these things that are very surface level that come out. You can almost see the wheels cranking here. Oops, it's time in the short story for Ted to need a motivation. Let me get this taken care of. Oops, Martha needs a reason to stay quiet. Let me get this part of the short story taken care of. That's one of the reasons I think that this is such a clunky Saunders short story, because in the length of something like Simplica Girl Diaries, you are better able to massage those motivating factors in through the length of the short story. When everything is crammed into the 12 pages that we have here, and George Saunders is a very light writer, right? Lots of spaces between, lots of dialogue, lots of open space in his short stories, lots of white spacing. So that leaves particularly few words to actually communicate whatever it is that the writer needs to get communicated, and whatever it is that the writer needs to have smoothed out. So that is all I have for this short story discussion. There is but one short story left in the collection, and it is the titular piece, 10th of December. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.